Sowjanya Shetty, welcome to the Data Strategy Show. It's great to see you, Sowjanya. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me here, Samir. Very honored to be part of the women's series that you're building. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. My pleasure to have you on the show. Look, for the audience, who don't know who you are, just give us a little background to who you are and where you've been and what you've done.
So I come from, my name is Sowjanya Shetty. Today, I run a company called Attitude Makeover, where I center around inner re-engineering or working on your inner operating system. But before this, from a coastal town in Karnataka called Mangalore, my parents migrated as knowledge migrants to Bangalore in the early 60s when Bangalore was just starting to be the Silicon Valley or the hub of India.
Okay.
So I grew up in a community called the Bharat Electronics community. It is surrounded by ambition all over. It was normalized. Ambition was normalized. Education was very sacred to all of us. And identity is something we were all exploring because we've all
Mm-hmm.
come from different parts of India. And scarcity as a mindset was like my early years because we lost my dad when I was 3 years old. So it was
Right.
just three women, my mom
Mm.
and my sister and me. I've been an observer of power in the early years, whether it is the power of money, the power of titles, surnames or the last name, gender,
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, all of these. I've been very fascinated in the early years to understand how power works and how people work around power. So it always initially fascinated me, eventually perturbed me, and today it becomes a big part of my work itself to go deeper to understand it. So at the age of 15 or 17, somewhere there as a teenager, someone in my mom's office mentioned that I not only take good notes, but there were certain special things they saw in my note taking ability. And
Okay.
I was hungry for pocket money and I didn't like going and asking money at home. So I ventured into trying to sell my notes. So growing up, I was always told education is the only inheritance I can give you, and it's going to allow you to survive anywhere in this world. And this, as a teenager, I realized it
Mm.
really works because it was not how much I earned, but the fact that I earned with something that was just mine
Yes.
really changed the wiring in my head. So I then got married. I started in Bharat Electronics and then went on to Honeywell. So I started my career as a chipset designer and
Okay.
someone who wrote interrupt programming.
Oh, wow.
Interrupt programming sort of sums up my communication skills as well. The external world will have some change and that will interrupt your hardware. Your hardware has just two bits to communicate whatever is the decision you need to make and with clarity
Mm-hmm.
and precision. And that sort
Mm.
of summed up how I was as a person. And then I got married and moved to the US. That was a whole different world full of abundance. I suddenly realized what an
Mm.
abundance world or a mindset is.
Yes.
Um, Jobs were in abundance if you were
Mm.
bringing value. The material abundance came in much later. First, it was just the mindset abundance. It just came and hit me. And I was like very blown away with the fact that if you're good, there's so much for you to,
Yes.
tap into. I think I'm probably a very good mix of the East and the West mindset because of that. And it shaped who I am throughout my career. I worked in places like HP, GE, and my
Mm-hmm.
last stint was in Microsoft. Um, Before I said, okay, I need to do something more for myself as an identity, and that's attitude makeover
Wow.
today.
Wow. That's fantastic. I love that. And I love the sort of the approach that you've taken and the realization along the way or the epiphanies that you had about certain aspects that you probably wouldn't have observed observed if you stayed in India, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe that wouldn't have become so apparent.
yeah.
But look, this season is all about women in data and tech, and obviously you've come from a technology background. I can see that. But it's really about, women in the workforce, women in the place of home, women in their country. And, I've sort of gone wider, and I'd really like to get your perspective on, being a woman from India, having traveled around the world, come back now to settle back in Bangalore, lay those roots from where once you came. What have you experienced along that journey that's given you a very distinct reality of how women are, the challenges for women in either the workplace or the home life or in the surrounding culture? I think that those are really things that I'd like to pick up on.
Sure. I'll go a little more into my
Mm,
upbringing. So my mom,
sure.
I think when my mom moved to from Mangalore to Bangalore, she was a homemaker. And then after my dad passed away, my mom had to figure out a job in the same
Mm,
company. Um, so she took about a year and a half to sort of land a job in BL. But the mindset back then was once you get into a company, you're sort of retiring there.
right. Yes.
And there's a safety and stability in it. And yet, because of what she has gone through in life very early on, there were some very foundational core value systems that were part of us, both my sister and me.
Mm-hmm.
One is to not take life for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I think when things come our way, there's a reason, people come our way, things come our way, and there's a particular reason for it. So I think when you grow in scarcity, you don't take things for granted that comes your
Yes.
way.
Yes.
That's the first thing. The second is I don't take um, being financially independent for granted either.
Mm-hmm.
Because with that comes a different kind of spine, a metal spine that uh, one has to experience. I think it comes naturally for men, but even a lot of women who are working women, we come back, especially in India. There's a man who manages the finances. Like I come
Right.
back and give my savings,
Mm,
and we'll have a joint account, etc., etc.
mm,
But I think
mm,
a big part of identity is how you are comfortable with money and your relationship
mm,
with money.
mm-hmm.
So that was another very foundational thing very early on. And like I said, because I learned that I can stand up on my own anywhere, like very early
Sure.
on, it was again, here's the third thing, right? Like I feel we wait for clarity to be handed to us in a beautiful gift box. But I
Mm-hmm.
think clarity comes with movement. You need to step out, you need to falter, you need to make some mistakes, you need to
Yeah.
move. And with the movement and the actions that you take, you get more and more clearer in
Mm,
how to proceed. So these are very foundational learnings of, growing up in a single mom's home. And plus
absolutely.
work-life balance, right? There's nothing called work-life balance. I've come to understand that very early on. I think we go through it's like seasons. Your life goes through seasons. There's a build season, there's a stabilize season, there is now
Mm-hmm.
optimize and get better
Right.
season. But you cannot be best in all seasons. So you have
Sure.
to pause to be able to give in to that season. Sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's your career. So these, I think, in my career, I found many women learn it over a period of time after
Mm-hmm.
they step out of home. Uh, but for us, life just gave us a crash course on it.
Okay.
So these are very
Yeah.
foundational for me. Um, when I came to the corporate world, I realized I was always surrounded by power as a child and I was
Mm,
observing it. But in the
mm-hmm.
corporate world, I was in the center of power, but yet I never felt powerful.
Okay. Okay.
Humility is a core value in Indian culture. You're not
Yeah.
You're appreciated if you are soft spoken, if
Mm.
you're more quieter, don't ask too many questions, don't say no. Whereas working in America, and my first job was in sales or pre sales,
Hmm.
it shattered all of these assumptions for me.
Well, you had to
Because
speak. You had to be forward. Yeah.
yes, and it was like I said, my communication was summed up with that how you handle interrupt handlers, right? How do you
Yeah.
do interrupt programming? And there I land, and it was all a complete. And I was working in this industry, which is interactive television, and I'm meeting some of the best NBA, NFL players, etc. So
Hmm.
they're all outspoken, extrovertish people,
Mm.
and I
Mm.
felt that I forcefully was trying to belong, and I felt
I
like I
see.
need to change something. It's not like I didn't have confidence or belief in what I come with, but I
Sure.
felt like I just was not missing something very important. So understanding culture became a
Mm.
very important part of my journey very early on in my career.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we miss that when we move from one job to another. You miss the culture part, and it's a very useful ingredient in any dish, I feel, and we miss that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but the sooner I learned that, and I had to figure out different ways of understanding how to understand American culture and that
Hmm.
system. But the sooner I learned that, I realized I was loving it. I was enjoying it, because I had this beautiful mix of the scarcity mindset, wherever it's required, and it brings discipline, it brings focus,
Yes.
and all of that. And the abundance mindset just brings opportunities, collaboration, allows you to open doors very easily, etc. So when I came back to India, I knew how I was standing out.
Hmm.
And I also realized that's when the job market, see, I lost jobs in the US as well. Some things are, life always happens a little earlier for me than the rest of the world, I
Okay.
feel. So when I was in the US, I got into a startup, and overnight they didn't raise funds. So we had to pack up.
Ah. Yeah.
And I'm on a work visa. And so I'm
Hmm.
an alien in the country, and I had to
Oh
figure
gosh.
out, okay, so now what? And I'm very independent as a woman. I don't like going and asking for help or money or
Mm.
anything.
Mm.
So I struggled with just that. So there were some foundational rules thereby about money. I'm
Mm.
going to save enough so that I never hit this situation. And I'm going to treat every job when I walk in as this is the last day. So in
Okay.
mindset,
Okay.
that's very different.
Wow.
Uh, so
That is a
I
very
will
different
speak
way
my
to look at
mind.
things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like this
So
is
so
my
tell
last day.
yeah, that I've never actually even thought about it that way, which is interesting because, as soon as you enter a job, it's like, oh my God, this is the first day of the rest of, my life, which is I think what you mentioned earlier about always having a job in India and having that
Yeah.
until you retire basically. So I do like that way of describing your first day or your last day, potentially. But I really like the what you talked about as the observer of power,
Hmm.
and you know, in India, obviously, power the power base is very different because, as you said, it's based on people or on, I think, well, we spoke about it before. It's based on surnames, and there is generally a gravitas, and women have to be dampened, they have to be quiet, they have to be subservient. How has that changed? What do you see moving away, sort of being able to become Sowjanya in America, and then branching out of yourself and building a power base? How has that affected you or others you speak to, and has India remained that way, or is it different now?
Oh, I don't think it's been that way, at least in the corporate world. That
Mm,
so initially, when I started working, I was the first woman in many teams. Like there
right.
aren't
Okay.
many embedded systems women
Yes.
programmers. There
Yeah,
aren't
true. True.
many women sellers in embedded systems.
Yeah.
There aren't many product managers or program managers
Mm.
in embedded systems. So I was always the first. I was the first pregnant woman in my team,
Okay.
surrounded with all youngsters, young men. And
Yeah.
so I think at some point, but this is where working in um, corporate cultures, which are very American in nature, made a difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
So my first job when I came back to India was in HP. And the culture is one which a love for the East and the West balance that I came back with
Right.
to really
Okay.
thrive.
Yeah.
And since I came from an upbringing which doesn't allow me to just keep quiet, I would be the
Mm.
one who would
Mm.
say things like, hey, like when I got pregnant, hey, we need um, a refrigerator in the
Right.
office so that I
Of
can
course.
express
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
milk.
Yeah.
And initially it was
Yeah.
very uncomfortable. Uh, but eventually they get it, and
Yes.
it changes. I never found a struggle in that per se.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I did see certain subtle nuances. Like as I started growing in my career, I started observing that we are more comfortable as women taking operational roles than roles which manage the money, which
Yeah.
bring the money, like P&L
Mm.
roles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at the risk of typecasting and generalizing. This is changing a lot now in India,
Sure.
but back
Sure.
then, if you're in a meeting room full of men and there's one woman, they look at you immediately and say, hey, can you describe?
Yes.
And I
I've
used to
heard that
hate it.
before.
I used to just
Yeah.
hate
Yeah.
it that how
Mm.
dare you?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
we're planning an outing or a team building. Hey, can you
Can you organize it?
can you just
Yeah.
take care of that? So, and I used to thrive in it initially, and then I noticed that, hey, no, no, I'm not going to
Yes.
do that. And
Mm.
I had to figure out initially it used to be aggressive. Eventually, I started getting more polished and graceful in it. And I realized a smile and a humor, brings magic into these kind of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned
Mm-hmm.
how to, manage that. But the
So
last
how did
fag
you
end,
do that? How
hmm?
did you do that? Because how did you do that? How did you manage it? Because there are many women I've spoken to who still have those challenges in the corporate world.
Yeah,
How did you
yeah.
manage it? What did you
So
say? What did you do?
my sense of humor is very weird.
Okay.
It's very crass, actually. It's really crass. It's very bad. And I learned it at home. I think my mom was a very dark, sarcastic. She's got a very dark sense of humor. And I
Okay.
learned it
Okay.
from her. And so I think over a period, I would just crack jokes. Oh, what happened? You
Mm,
forgot to bring your book. So I'll take it this time, but next time, I'll charge you.
right.
Or I'll tell, I'll say 10 rupees, 10 rupees per second for
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
line I write. One
Yeah.
understands that, I'm not okay with it. I'm going to be accepting this time. Gradually, I started being more honest about it as well, in a
Mm,
more nicer
mm,
way. But initially, I struggled. It used
yes.
to be
Yes.
like, there were times when there was everything, right? From the clothes you wear. I've heard things
Mm.
like, what happened? The tailor forgot the rest of the clothing, is it,
Oh my
for a
goodness.
skirt I was wearing?
Wow.
And I used to be like, wow. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
gradually I learned how to handle all these. These are more subtle ones. But bigger ones I started noticing as I started mid-career and growing
Mm,
in leadership. Um,
mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be a number. And I felt
Right.
like there were more and more of these diversity conversations. And like I said, I don't like being discriminated in any manner, form, and shape from a young
Sure.
age. And so this was not okay because till then I had grown because of what I bring to the table. And suddenly there was this whole conversation of diversity and
Mm-hmm.
number. And I just
Mm.
didn't like that. And as much as I think it's very important to have representation at
Sure.
every
Sure.
level in an organization, when you make it a number game, it is very
Yes.
distasteful for
Yes. True.
everybody. And so
Mm.
I didn't like that. And I kept voicing, I still do that. I voice my opinion around that.
Very good.
Uh, but I think as I started climbing up the ladder, I realized um, how important it is to take on roles which manage money. Um,
Mm. Mm.
and otherwise, you're always a supporting role. There's always one loud mouth that gets a feed, and you're always going to feed the loud mouth. And there's a balance between being the loud mouth and supporting a loud mouth, and and
Yes.
doing it gracefully as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
think those are things I learned more in Microsoft because it allows you,
Okay.
again, as a company in India, we were doing sales which is so big and vast that many smaller organizations would take eons to really cover a quota of that kind. And to be able to manage that in a sales team as large and
Mm-hmm.
big as Microsoft, and to see it so closely on the impact you bring, that was a game changer for me. And that's when I realized a lot more. The finer nuances of change. It's hard. Sales is a difficult thing, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
every woman
Mm-hmm.
should do sales at some point in life,
Yes. I
preferably
think
early
I
on.
think everybody should do sales.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And every woman should leave her house and go to another country where the culture is extremely different from what you have grown up with to
Mm-hmm.
really,
Mm-hmm.
brush off and like shake off that whole wiring that we have, right? And they
Yes.
do
Yes.
a fab job when you step outside. But post that, I think it's very important then to come back
Mm-hmm.
and see how leadership is. And a lot of
Mm.
this in the mid career, what I realized is you can be good in sales, and sales is hard, but you can still be good in sales and you can sell any kind of technology. But what's even more difficult is adoption.
Right.
And that adoption comes down to people. So,
Mm-hmm.
as much as you understand power as this external force, um, people are a big integral part of
Oh
the
yeah.
power equation. And one
Mm-hmm.
forgets the role of people, and which then made me realize why and how important it is to understand your inner self and trust
Mm-hmm.
your inner self and your operating system. Because when that is imbalanced, you can get success in your career. You're never happy. It's still not hitting you the way it has to hit
Yes.
you.
I'm interested. I wrote it down. That was the first thing I wrote down, the inner operating system. I'm interested to understand what that is and how it can help women to get out of themselves, as you said earlier, leaving the country and shedding all the wiring that they had. So tell me a little bit about this iOS.
So I found this. So in HP, see, as an individual contributor throughout, and techies love to be ICs, right? Like I
I
just
don't know
love
what that
it.
is. What is an
So it
individual
is
country? Okay,
basically you don't have the responsibility of people reporting to you.
I see.
You're growing to be an architect of a technology platform or
Right,
a
right.
system. So I'm a very system thinker
Okay.
because of my education and the
Mm.
work that I've been doing, and it allows you to think system in everything. Um, but at some point in HP, I had my bosses come and say, hey, we need you to take up people management skills because as you grow in the technology line, you still have to manage people. And very reluctantly, I took up the responsibility because
Hmm.
it's huge responsibility. I felt I'm not a empathetic person. I
Okay.
cannot empathize with a lot of people because I feel people cry very early with small
Mm.
troubles and
Okay.
pains. And I
Mm.
feel like, dude, you need to. So I've always felt like I'm a thick-skinned person. And I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes.
you need to toughen up. And
Yep.
sorry, I'm not going to bring empathy into this story. And that's been me for a really long time. And then they shoved this responsibility of people management, and I just hated it because suddenly I have to hear what's happening in people's home.
Oh, yes.
Um, I just got married.
Yes.
Things are getting expensive at home. I've had a child. This child isn't sleeping. These were something I was oblivious to as a IC and as an individual contributor, and suddenly it became my responsibility. And that changed some things about my understanding of people.
Mm. Hmm.
Mm, till then, my perspective on identity was Sowjanya Shetty, XYZ job in ABC company. And suddenly that wiring changed to, oh, there's more.
Yes, there
There's
is.
more to it. Uh, because then as you interview people and get people into your teams, I realize I'm more curious to know what you do outside of work. Because a
Mm.
lot of your personality comes from that other side
Sure.
of you. So I started understanding your inner operating system beyond career. And there are more attributes to it, like, how are you in your social side? How content are you there? How
Hmm.
content are you in your inner self? Like, do you trust yourself? I found
Mm.
as women, especially, I don't think we have a skill or capability issue. We're as competent as
Sure.
anybody.
Sure.
Um, I think we face resistance in our own inner self.
Okay.
And we push for perfections
Mm.
or
Yes, true.
readiness.
Mm.
So I noticed that men are much more comfortable in being ready for thing and taking the plunge to try. And that comes from that abundance mindset, right? Whereas we push back because we are not there. And we don't need anybody else but our own selves to push us back. And I felt that was a second part of a wiring that I felt like, this needs to be
Right.
talked
Yeah.
about a little more. And
Hmm.
the third is growing up in a single parent home. I was very familiar thereby as to what it takes to build a home
Mm.
in its completeness. And as a working woman, there's more to her than that job.
Of course there is.
Uh,
Yeah.
right? There's two kids who are waiting at home. If she makes a bad meal, that's it. We're going to. Like I used to hide food in between newspapers because my mom's food was so bad I couldn't
Oh,
eat them.
really? Oh my goodness.
So
I
there was
hope you
much
told your
more.
mother that. I hope you told her that once.
Yeah, yeah. So back then we used to sell newspapers and
Right.
books, and we
Yeah.
used to get money from that. And the guy who used to come to collect this recycled material would
Yeah.
be like, "Ma'am, it weighs a lot more because there's a lot of dried food in between."
Oh, I see. Oh my
And so
God.
I realized that it's because I took on from IC to people management and I grew in that, that I realized there's more to an identity than
Mm,
just your career. And I
of course.
feel we, as working professionals, put all our might on just one identity, whereas identity is like a basket of fruits. And you're just going to keep adding to it in
Yes,
different,
yeah, absolutely.
um,
Mm,
the fruit basket is up to you
mm,
how you want to fill it. So that was a game changer again in terms of the inner operating system. And then when you think of change, um, there are certain scaffoldings that are very important. Like your health is very important. If your physical and your mental health is not there, um, I will not be happy, and thereby
yes.
everybody around me can feel the walking on eggshells experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
felt, again, we don't talk much. Like, we've had so many bosses who would be so irritated that everybody's like, okay, come prepared. uh, so, how to address it, right? Like, I felt like there are subtle nuances in our inner operating system
Mm-hmm.
that we
Mm-hmm.
miss. And I worked with some really cool leaders, I feel, both in HP and pretty much all my jobs, where I learned the art of writing a vision, having a perspective of your own,
Right.
um, standing up for that, and
Mm,
taking baby
mm,
steps and experimenting, failing, being comfortable with that, driving innovation, and then driving it all the way from an idea to a product to a
mm-hmm.
market.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that. I've been part of that to understand. the same can be applied to a human. But we are so much more layered than technology.
Yes, true.
Technology is much more simpler. You just have, like, if you take a printer, there's a hardware, there's a middleware, there's an application layer, and then the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in human beings, there's a lot more. There's you, there's the inner self, there's your mind, your mindset, and your body. Sometimes a lot of us, even I learned the art of listening to my body when I turned 46.
Okay.
Um, I
Specific
didn't know.
age.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I didn't know that the body speaks before the mind speaks. The body says a lot more. I didn't know that. Always running, and I learned that at 46. Then the power of scaffoldings, like your community that supports you. How do you build relationships? So in the corporate world, when I go to conferences, there are 1,000 people, you exchange cards. My phone book is full of people, but what use is it if I don't know whom to
If you don't know
connect
them.
with
Correct.
and
Yeah.
for what? Right?
Mm.
And as
Mm.
as selfish as it sounds, my time is so precious that I don't want to just collect phone numbers. I want relationships that are so meaningful, that tomorrow I have that scaffolding. We miss out on some of these very
We do.
fundamental inner wirings.
Yeah.
Relationship
Yeah.
with money is another one for women. We miss out in understanding that, and at a later age, suddenly we realize, oh, I've dedicated my whole life for others,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then I realize what happened to me, sort of thing. So these are some very basic inner wirings um, that I found over the period working as a change catalyst, a chief of staff, a product manager, a business development head, and etc. That I realized we don't do much about, we don't
Mm-hmm.
talk about, and even the metrics, right? There's leading metrics, there are balancing metrics, there are
Sure.
indicators to it, iterations on how you go about tools and methodologies and frameworks that we are so familiar in the corporate world around change, which is why when you look at technology and change, it's accelerating today because I can now take cloud technology and then apply it to healthcare. And
Mm-hmm.
I can see how it impacts different touch points in the journey of a customer. But we don't do the same thing with our own life. And
Mm.
life is so
Mm.
layered that
It
it's more
is.
important
It
that
is.
you understand this.
And
So I
maybe
felt like
and
this needs to be talked about.
yes, no, absolutely. I think it does. And in some way, shape or form, I was thinking about your first day at your job is your last day. You know, I was thinking now when you said we don't apply it to ourselves, today could be my last day. I mean, it sounds like an awful way to look
Yes,
at it, but it's
yes,
it's absolutely true, in that
yes,
sense. Anything could happen,
yes,
and we have no idea.
yeah.
So it's interesting. Is this now something that you are um, solely focused on to explore these things with women, the inner
Yeah.
operating system, or is it with anybody generally, or are you focused on women?
So I do it with everybody,
Mm,
but on a personal front, I am more specifically also. Uh, so there are two parts: attitude makeover. I talk about it for everybody, but as
mm-hmm.
Sowjanya, I have been exploring what it really means to be a woman in India. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, I grew up in Bangalore, then I went and stayed everywhere else, and I've come back. That mindset, I'm probably the 1% or 3% in India, right?
Right.
And that's a luxury or a privilege.
Mm,
And I function in that bubble for 45, 46 years.
okay. Yes.
And at some point, I felt like I have been living in a bubble. India is changing. I think
Mm,
this is the best time to invest in India, to be in India, to be part of this journey. And I feel I'm perfectly positioned. Like I said, I don't take anything for granted. Then I need to understand what it means to be a woman in India more
sure.
specifically and in detail.
Mm-hmm.
And as I go, I do this by going to grassroots and really working with elected representatives in India to
Mm-hmm.
understand what do they go through. And that's more foundational. Like,
Okay.
it's things that I assume and take for granted as,
Mm.
oh, it's there with me, so everybody should have it, is not a reality out there.
Yes.
And when I start internalizing that, my thereby iterations that I come back with an attitude makeover is much more solid, is much more impactful, much more powerful. Um, so yeah, it is gradually been building into the intersection of systems thinking, lean, agile frameworks and
Mm-hmm.
methodologies, the psychology of change, and the integration of these, the intersection of these three is where your inner operating system wiring starts becoming better. When you
Fantastic.
understand these three.
Yeah.
When you remove your system, like let me give you an example of a
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Um, if I come from a very conservative home, where just stepping out is such a big deal and I manage that. And if you come and tell me, what's the big deal? Why are you such a fusspot?
Mm-hmm.
You and I will never work together because I'll tell you right there, whether it's loud or in my own head, that sorry, bro, you don't understand my world. And it's
Okay.
easier for
Yeah.
you to speak this way. But if
Yeah.
I am able to then bring out the challenge you're actually facing, and from that space, then talk about how do you take small steps of
Mm-hmm.
clarity for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
helping you change your narrative itself. And
Mm.
it's in this
Mm.
narrative and in this identity shift that new opportunities come.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen this, the impact of it right there. And it's very quick. You can see it so quickly. It's frustrating. It's like irritating as well for
Sure.
the
Yeah,
other
of
who's
course it
going
is.
through it.
Of course it is. Yeah.
But it's also beautiful to see it and how it's transforming little by
Fantastic.
little.
So look, my final question to you is this. What's the top three things that you would tell women who are uh, thinking of, a career in sales or technology or whatever it might be? What are the top three things that they need to do right now in order to change that inner operating system?
I think first is know yourself enough to be able to trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think stop seeking external validation. Just know yourself enough to be able to
Yes.
trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Second, go on a path of seeking clarity
Mm-hmm.
for yourself. Everything from what is it you want to what's the impact you want to create. And women are very clear on some of these. A lot of us know about it. So
Mm.
go on that journey of exploring or seeking clarity. It requires a different mindset to seek
Sure.
clarity. It requires you to be a little more experimentative, a little
Mm-hmm.
more informed and knowledge, critical thinking, big picture
Yes.
concepts. It
Yeah.
requires you to think system. Go on that explorative journey
Mm-hmm.
of seeking clarity. And
Mm-hmm.
third, understand it's not a lone journey. Seek help, collaborate. The tribe. When you have like-minded women, it's a very powerful way to move forward. You'll be amazed with the power of many coming together. So the golden triangle of power, people, and politics,
Mm-hmm.
master that. I
Mm-hmm.
would say that's the third one. Master the triangle for yourself, of how this golden triangle works, whether it's at home, in your teams, in your community, in your organization, in your leadership. I think when you have these three and you lead with your identity, that leadership is one which brings stability
Mm-hmm.
for others, and clarity for others.
Yeah.
And in that is an evolution of growth, I feel. Uh, yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, that's absolutely a brilliant note to end on. So I'd like to thank you so much for being on the show, for
Thank you.
imparting all these wonderful moments or experiences that you've had and the epiphanies. And I would love to speak to you again. I think we could speak forever, really.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to more conversations. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Right.